It's actually working out better than expected, but it's moving all over the place due to vibrations from the saw. I'm gonna have to make some kind of mechanism on my workbench later to secure this thing in place to prevent it from moving. I'm getting pretty clean cuts with this. It's easy to follow the line too. The wood has soaked up all the oil and now has internal protection against moist. I'm also going to give it some coats of clear coat spray to make it smooth and shiny, making it easier to clean after use. There we go, all nice and smooth. Unfortunately, I have to saw up the lid I spent so much time on in order to pave way for a new upgrade idea. A rip fence would be very smart to have, so I have now waited 3 weeks in order for some T-tracks and screws to arrive from Temu. Obviously, I can't have these on top of the lid, so I have to cut the lid up and place them in between the pieces and glue it all together and hope it sticks. After a lot of annoyance while handsawing, all pieces are cut up and ready to be glued. There we go, clamped in place. Took some fucking around as I don't have clamps big enough. I'll do the same on top and leave it for some days. Then hopefully this mix of super glue and wood glue will hold it together. Wood glue was a bad idea for a gap this big. It just shrinks to a rubbery substance, so I'm gonna remove it and use epoxy instead, which I didn't even remember I had lying around. I'll add some blue food coloring and see how that turns out too. There we go. That should do the trick. I could also just have piled on with the super glue as that has become hard as rock. Now I just have to wait yet another day before I can finally proceed to complete this thing. It's been curing overnight and is now fully solid. This turned out great. It's ugly though, so I need to fine-tune it some before I can attach the lid again. That's good enough and I'm finally back on track. It's been a lot of fucking around and mistakes with this project, but then again, it's a prototype of something I have never attempted before, and I have learned a lot along the way. Now all that remains is to add the rip fence and some other upgrades. The orange straps don't look too good, so I'll try to dye them with black leather dye and see how that turns out. After washing off the excessive dye, I'm left with a mix of black and orange. I'll call it blorange. Ugly, but at least less eye-catching than orange. Kinda suspected leather dye wouldn't work out too well on nylon. I can now use it outdoors too during the darkness period without having to fiddle around with extra lights. Well, I'm not going to win any awards for drilling straight holes for sure. I could have used my column drilling machine and gotten it straight and aligned in both ends, but I'm always trying to use as basic tools as possible. The bolts are probably a bit too long, so I'll have to cut them off later. It doesn't fit. The distance between the two bolts is a few millimeters too short due to my crappy drilling. Luckily, I bought a set of files yesterday that contains one I can use to expand my tight hole. There we go. It fits and it works great. The last upgrade is a lock that should prevent the docking station from moving around when in use. Now once I tighten the bolts, these holsters apply pressure between the docking station and the workbench, keeping it in place. Without them, the bolts would have to be shorter and it would be harder to tighten them due to these cheap Temu turn knobs being so small and right on top of the bottom, making it hard to get a grip on them. The bolts are screwed in and the docking station is locked in place. Everything is good to go. It kind of works like a charm and it cuts in a nice straight line. But I'm not gonna lie, it's quite intimidating to use this thing. It makes a whole lot of noise and it vibrates like fuck. I'm shaken to my bones now. The main drawback is that the teeth of the blade are facing upwards, so the blade will always try to pull the material up. To avoid that, I have to keep the material pushed down towards the lid while sawing. This one got stuck in the bubble vial area, which wasn't very cool. I was afraid it would kick up the whole log, so I guess I gotta fill that up with wood filler and smoothen it out to prevent that from happening again. Stuck here as well. That little plastic thing sticking out there gotta go. It's quite hard to use if I can't have a hand on both sides of the blade, so probably won't be using the rip fence unless I can have my hand between that and the blade. So the main worries are the blade trying to throw up the wood while sawing, slapping my hand into the blade at the same time. The second one is the cutoffs jamming between the blade and the rip fence, causing the blade to bend or shatter, which probably would result in disaster. Not sure if that is even possible though. And, since the teeth are going upwards, getting my hand in the blade probably wouldn't do much more damage than a superficial cut. Anyways, since I don't have a miter or table saw, this infernal noise machine that is probably 80% safe to use is gonna come in handy. Let me know in the comments if you would use it.